Welcome to today's discussion on the evolution of leadership and its role in building adaptive, resilient organizations. We'll explore how leadership has shifted from ancient taskmasters focused on control to modern servant leaders who enable innovation and collaboration. As work has evolved from simple stone carrying to complex knowledge work, these qualities, innovation and collaboration, have become essential for agile culture and successful AI implementations. Servant leadership creates the conditions that make all of this possible. Welcome to Agile for AI. I'm Sean, a lean Agile coach with over 20 years of experience and a deep passion for aligning Agile and AI to build healthier, more productive workplaces. Let's dive in. First, let's establish a historical context. Where does leadership come from? Where did it start? How did it evolve? I've talked about this in other videos before. I've put some links in the description so you can watch those at a later time if you haven't already. But in short summary, consider that historically humanity had to deal first with the basics, very simple tasks, difficult, no question about that, but they were simple. So what does that mean? It's a heavy rock. It takes a lot of effort, personal, physical effort to move it, but it's not something I need to think too much about. I just need to put a lot of effort into it. That has been evolving over time. The type of work that we're doing is becoming more and more complex. Simple things, we have figured out ways to manage them efficiently and with less effort. Now we're dealing with the really complex stuff, the stuff that we don't know, the stuff where there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. So, in this evolution from very simple things to really complex things that we're dealing with these days, along the way, this concept of theory X emerged. It's actually theory X, Y, and Z management assumptions. In the theory X, which is the earlier one, which is from the 1800s, there are management assumptions. Management assumes that workers are lazy, they need supervision, otherwise they're not going to do anything, and they need some external motivator in order to get the job done. This comes in the form of rewards and punishments, carrots and sticks. Unless there's somebody there who is doing that, workers are not going to do anything. And this is an evolution. This is a result, remember, of this very overpowering, almost heroic leadership persona of the person who could remove all obstacles through brute force in order to get the job done, whatever the job was up until that point. That leadership persona persists even to this day. Unfortunately, it leads to very toxic work environments, a lot of dysfunctions. And this is where it comes from. Okay. And early on in the 1800s, it was still very prevalent. It was the way of managing. Management equated this. You're a good manager. This is what you're doing. The Industrial Revolution reinforced the concept of hierarchical systems that were focused on compliance and productivity. And there was this really big push and requirement that we needed to produce more and more and more, bigger, bigger, bigger. Mass production needed to be achieved. And if we just kept on going without any checks, without any constraints, work environments were already a dangerous place. Literally, people's lives were a danger working. There was a lot of dissatisfaction. People were not happy. And then comes Frederick Taylor. He introduced this concept of scientific management. And in scientific management, yes, definitely he addressed the concern from businesses on getting more productivity, maximizing, optimizing labor through standardization. He achieved it through a standardization, strict supervision. There's a lot of micromanagement and output maximization. These were the priorities. And he included the human factors. He wasn't just thinking there exclusively on how to deliver more at lower costs. He wanted for the workers to have better lives, to have more income, to be able to realize more of their personal dreams and satisfaction. So he balanced things a little bit. He started us on the road that balanced things and included in the equation of coming up with a definition of the workplace, the human factor. So his result was high efficiency, but low adaptability because it was based on things that were very well defined, very repeatable, and things that he could come up with formulas because there were clearly established patterns that could lead to the optimum execution. Um, so when we are talking about knowledge-based work, we need adaptability. We need to be able to react to whatever it is that's emerging at the moment that's close to real time because every second counts and it can be an opportunity lost. So this approach doesn't align well with that. So then we move into lean and the Toyota production system. And in the lean and Toyota production system in the mid 20th century, Toyota demonstrated that involving workers, getting their opinion, their input in improvement led to better results than just having a control, a focused group that was making all the decisions, which was Taylor's perspective. No, and this recognizes that where the action is, where things are happening, that's where the most information rests. And frontline workers who are immersed in this day to day, they have the most information. So oftentimes they have the best perspective to come up with creative ideas, as long as we listen to them, as long as we empower them to speak up. Lean and the Toyota Production System introduced that concept. That was revolutionary, and they demonstrated that it works. And that were planted the early seeds for collaboration, shared responsibility, and as part of that, respect for people. So up until this point, largely what the predominant perspective and the type of work that's happening was very physical in nature, very task-oriented leadership that worked for repetitive manual labor, but it was still ill-suited for the complexity of modern knowledge work. So then we move into evolving from that, evolving from the command influence, from command to influence. And what happened then is that in the 1980s, this concept of participative management emerged. There are two key contributors to this, and I'll just mention them today, and eventually I'll have a video on that because they really brought a lot of very useful perspective and approaches and practices and tools that are effective to this day. It was a really remarkable contribution. So Peter Drucker, he introduced this concept of leadership being decentralized, leading to autonomy and enabling the knowledge workers to solve complex problems. So he built on this concept. He established this concept of workers have the information that can then help us solve the complex problems. They have this information. We should listen to it. And as part of that, we're sharing authority with them. We're sharing with them the ability to make critical decisions in order to help us figure out whatever it is that needs to be figured out, the complex problem. Warren Benn is another key contributor, and he establishes a distinction between leaders and managers. From his perspective, a leader is somebody who inspires and empowers, where a manager controls and organizes. So these are different perspectives, different focus. It's not about saying that one is better than the other. These are two different things, but he gives us a clear definition of what leadership means. There's a core shift that happens from these contributions that they make. It takes us from this task-driven authority to people-centered leadership. Instead of just looking at the work as the thing that drives all of the decisions and all the perspective and everything that we need to do to manage people. What about people? What do people need in this equation? How do we fulfill the needs of people so that we get the things that we need? Lean and Agile build on this, and they participate, they introduce the tools, the perspectives, the mechanisms that feed into lean servant leadership by adding that leaders are there to support the teams, that they're there to remove obstacles and enable innovation. Agile leadership replaces control with inspiration, collaboration, empowerment. So both lean and agile recognize the human element, the connection, the human connection that is needed in order to deliver the results that the company and everybody wants to do. Fundamentally, as we're progressing away from the Theory X mindset, both lean and agile recognize that there are intrinsic motivators that people have. People want to do a good job. They want to contribute in meaningful ways that help the company, that help the city that they live in, the country that they live in, the world that they live in. These are things that they don't have to be told. They don't need this external carrot and stick in order to be able to do it. They want to do it. So if we recognize that, if lean and agile both recognize that, what do we need in order to fuel that? What do we need in order to get more of that? And this is where changing leadership is so important. Leadership becomes more about modeling behaviors, not commanding. Leaders in this shift become mentors, facilitators that model the behaviors that we expect from everybody. And there was another factor that was playing in at the time as part of this evolution. And that is that the way that we organize not just the work, but the teams in a company started shifting, recognizing that there's scarcity in skill sets, for example, and that there may be transitory needs for particular skills or people. There are many different factors that came into it. We'll talk in detail in the future about what matrix organizations, the advantages that they bring as a tool along the line. But what this relationship, this loose relationship created was that we started establishing dotted line reporting relationships. It's more about influence. It's more about relationships with people who have the skill, the knowledge, the abilities that we need to realize the work that we're doing, rather than having a direct relationship with them. They don't have to report to us in order to be part of the team, in order to contribute to the team. So in this shift, there needs to be shared accountability. It's no longer there's very clear, direct, this team reporting to this manager, that's where all the accountability lies. No, we're extending that scope to include others across the organization. So as we increase this sphere of accountability, it requires leadership to build trust relationships, not just enforce their authority. And this is what eventually leads to the coining this term of servant leadership. Servant leadership came about from Robert Greenleaf in 1970. He wrote a paper, The Servant Leader. And the funny thing about it was that he was inspired by two things: his own work at AT&T, his experiences working at AT&T, and a novel by Hermann Hesse. It was A Journey to East. In that novel, there was a character, Leo, who presented as a humble helper. And later on in the story, it was revealed that he was actually the leader for the group. So these influences led him to coin this term of servant leaders. And the servant leader is characterized by having high empathy, being focused on growth, both personal and the people around them, the people that they're there to support, and being pursuing service over power, understanding that that service to others is actually far more effective a way of creating strong relationships with the people that we work with. And here I want to take a pause to highlight something about the term servant leadership that personally bothers me. And this is something that I find many times in Agile. I've made a video about this when I talked about Agile methodologies, for example, where the term doesn't make any sense just from the words Agile methodology. They don't make any sense. Watch that video so you understand what I'm talking about. But servant leadership, as a coach, I've had really tough conversations coaching leadership when I introduce this concept. I get these wide eyes and kind of like, what? Who are you? Why are you telling me this? This is the wrong crowd to be using these words. It doesn't resonate right away. And I think that's a fault of the terminology. And like that, there are many things in Agile that I find that the terminology that we use, it's not that it's necessarily incorrect. From a purely academic standpoint, I think it's quite accurate, but it doesn't make sense when we're just having conversation about it. So instead of servant leadership, maybe we would have done better if we had said supportive leadership, as opposed to commanding leadership. This is a distinction. So just the side note, but it's an important point that I'll come back to when we talk about the challenges in establishing servant leadership. So there's a misconception that comes around from the term itself. Now, that servant leadership is it's not about subservice. It's not about being subservient. It's about being supportive, being a supportive leader, enabling others to thrive. Technically, yes, accurate, but the point is that we're enabling others to thrive. So our priority is to understand others' needs and doing what we can to help them, to support them so that they can reach their highest potential. They become the best version of themselves. We're there to help them get there. And that establishes moral authority, which is earned through trust. It replaces the positional authority that exists just from merely hierarchical relationship. And that's really, really, really key because it shifts the dynamic between workers and leadership profoundly. I've touched on this before when I talk about lean. There's this concept of pull versus push, and it applies to this dynamic. What we're talking about is in a push relationship, the command and control pushes compliance and execution. Somebody's coming to you and is doing something to get you to do something. Push systems have the deficiency, the flaw, the danger of overloading whatever we're pushing, whether it's people, processes, technology. When you push too much, you're going to overload. That's not going to work. As opposed to, as compared to pull systems. Pull systems, we give the space for the person, the process, the technology to say, hey, I'm ready for something else. I need something else. I want something else. They want it. When they want something, when they're looking for something, their mind is open. They're looking for it. That's far more effective than coming to somebody and telling them. So servant leadership pulls engagement through shared vision, purpose, and trust. It creates the conditions for people to want to come to their manager, as opposed to hiding from them. They want to come to the manager, say, I have this situation. Can you help me? Do you have any ideas? I need this. I'm not able to move forward because I'm lacking this. I need this piece. So it profoundly changes the relationship between leadership and teams and delivery teams. And Agile helps us in all this. It gives us a little bit of a framework to help establish strong, stable, sustainable servant leadership. If we recall the four pillars of Agile that I've defined before, from a context perspective, the servant leader clarifies the goals and purpose. So they create a shared perspective that everybody can focus on. This creates team level, organization level, company level focus. We're not in a situation where we're going to pay people to just do whatever they want, right? The company has objectives, they has purpose. We need clarity of what that is in order for everybody to align based on the goals, the shared desired outcomes. The servant leader creates that clarity, helps us understand what does it mean, what does the company need, and helps us focus our work in alignment with that. From a mindfulness pillar perspective, the servant leader adapts to the emergent challenges with awareness. They're not just there to push the agenda, the Gantt chart, the list, the to-do list, and that's it. They're there to understand the conditions of the people doing the work relative to that list, and then making whatever adjustments are needed, brokering whatever trade-offs, whatever is needed in order to get there. They have a connection with people. They understand not just the basics of the work itself, but also what people as human beings need in order to be able to do the work. And that means that from the pillar of respect, they prioritize the team growth and empowerment. They view people as human beings, capable human beings who can do the work, who don't need people to tell them. They need support, yes. And they're intelligent human beings who are capable of thinking through and doing things on their own. This is what leads eventually to team true self-organization and self-management. These are concepts that really create an entrepreneurial environment in teams. When we finally get to the point where they feel the confidence and they're empowered, they're enabled to make their own decisions. The servant leader, out of respect, prioritizes their growth and empowerment to get to that and whatever else that they're capable of figuring out on their own. And all of this, the pillar of trust, the servant leader fosters that collaborative, psychologically safe environment. And part of the way that they do that is by making themselves vulnerable and transparent in that vulnerability and in many other ways, which requires emotional intelligence. Servant leaders need to have a high level of emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, where they high emotional quotient, where they have self-awareness, empathy, and regulation of their own emotions and perspectives as they're going through work and they're going through whatever critical situations are happening. This is essential for servant leaders to navigate through all of the uncertainty and creating an environment where innovation, creativity, and all that is possible. They become human beings, and that helps people want to seek out their advice, their support, their example. And this is ever so critical in complex work environments. Um, I've talked about complexity and difficulty before. The domain that we're most concerned here is complexity. Knowledge work largely is about complex work. The simple command and control works for predictable work that has very well-defined patterns. I mentioned that earlier. Taylor was looking at highly repeatable situations, and he was just coming up identifying the patterns and then coming up with solutions that fit that pattern. That's fine for simple work, but that doesn't work for complex work. Complex or chaotic work, the problems are emergent. They require experimentation, they require skill, they require high intelligence to be able to jump on a situation and deal with it. They can't be solved through top-down control. And that's a really important point. When companies haven't embraced this way of management, they're really setting themselves up for failure for critical situations, because there's a time delay between the issue that's happening at the front line and it trickling all the way up to senior leadership to make a decision, and then trickling all the way down to engage in action. That time delay, sometimes you could lose a business over that. That's very dangerous, especially today. We need, this is again, Lean brought this to light, and it said that by empowering people who are at the front line, who have all of the information to make critical business decisions, it actually works. Not only does it work, we get better decisions. There was a concept that was introduced, which is the on-down cord. This cord, literally a cord in the production lines in Toyota, empowered the line workers to stop the line. Stopping the line, that's huge. You're bringing the factory to a stop. Well, yes, they empowered them to do that. Why? Because that increased safety. It increased the ability to respond to a critical situation that couldn't wait for a message to trickle up to management and getting a response. The person who's right there is an intelligent human being who's seeing, we better stop or we have a serious problem. Somebody could die, right? So we break that. Servant leadership supports this and creates the environment where this is possible to do. So where servant leadership thrives is by creating psychological safety. Teams can experiment, they can fail, they can learn without fear of punishment. We create the conditions for them to be able to learn on their own, because as they learn to learn, they learn to solve, they learn to resolve crisis problems, critical situations. That's what we want. We want for them to be able to do that. We don't want them to be dependent on somebody else making the decisions, somebody else solving the problems. The faster that they can do it, the better. The business goes faster. This is business agility. And Agile aligns with that. It creates progress in an iterative way, in a shared way where multiple people can contribute in an adaptive way that adjusts to things as they are emerging. Now, up until Agile, the way when I look back, I see that Agile gave us a bit of a dress rehearsal opportunity to figure out how to move away from this command and control with all of its limitations. I say it again, and I've said it many times. The waterfall approach works. It works for certain type of work. And no, we're not looking to apply that agile and these iterative approaches to everything. There are scenarios where the waterfall approach is absolutely the best approach. If we can come up with a best practice for something, let's codify that. And guess what? That is the stuff that fits well under waterfall. That is the stuff that's a low-hanging fruit that AI, automation, robotics can come in and take over. And that's also a cautionary note. If that's what you like, be careful. Your job's on the line. So AI, as it's coming into the workplace, it's now making it critically important. And I hate overusing the word, but I really mean it. It is critical because if we don't pay attention, if we ignore this, and if we fall back to the traditional waterfall ways of doing things, command and control ways of doing things, then AI can take over, as I just said, and do it far more effectively than any human being can. And that's where the dystopian future comes in. Without mindful leadership, AI becomes just a new control mechanism, micromanagement on steroids, monitoring, all of the dystopian things that so many people are afraid of, rightfully so. And this is not just fear mongering, it's already happening. So we need to be really careful. If we inject servant leadership as a standard, as a norm, as a new relationship between leadership and delivery teams, that permeates into all aspects of the company. We have a better chance of implementing AIs that enhance creativity and innovation in alignment with that servant leadership, as opposed to eroding it and ignoring human dignity. Leaders must model empathy and humility in order to guide safe AI integrations in a responsible way. And that's a critical point, that humility, that vulnerability. So, how do we do it? I've been there. I'm hoping that some of you are maybe project managers, middle managers, senior leadership. And I hope that you can relate to some of the things that I'm about to share with you. And if you're not, I hope that you have the opportunity to talk to leadership about this. Because we really need to be empathic in both directions. This transition into a servant leadership model is really, really difficult. When I went through it, it was confusing. It was scary, and it really left me with a lot of puzzles that I was not prepared to figure out at the time. At the time that this happened, that I went through it, I was senior director of IT. Huge responsibilities where we're dealing with very sensitive information, so high security and uptime deliveries and all those things. And the pressures and the responsibility were huge. And then comes this managing by influence and servant leadership. And I'm like, what? I have all of this responsibility, all of this accountability, and I have to convince people that this is a good thing for them to do. Are you joking? I literally, it was, and many times it was just hilarious. It's like, what are we talking about? This doesn't make any sense. And it took me a while, and it was scary. And the trust relationships are so important. I needed to develop that trust in my team to really own the accountability to make sure that we delivered what was needed. That was scary. That was definitely scary. And one thing that hurts along the way, that makes it harder, there's an evolution as we implement Agile, the Agile way of doing things, and the Agile culture that establishes that the accountability for delivery shifts from the leadership and the management, direct management, to the delivery teams. And that's why we call them delivery teams. Their accountability is for delivery. However, companies take a while to understand this shift. They still look to the managers, like you're the one who is accountable for the delivery. And as long as that exists, yes, as a leader, you're going to feel this split between I have all the responsibility, all the accountability, and the team doesn't understand what needs to be done. And it takes them a while. We need to create the space for them to understand. You need to consider that for years, they have been accustomed to us as leadership telling them what to do. They haven't exercised their muscles on leadership and decision making. That's on us. We prevented that. And now we're expecting for them to make good decisions. That's a big ask. And we need to make it safe for them to do that. We need to allow the teams to make their decisions, fully knowing that sometimes they're going to be the wrong decision, problematic decisions, and allow them to learn from that. The caveat: if we see that they're heading in a direction that's going to create irreparable damage, both to the teams, to the company, to the company reputation, whatever, of course, we say something. We don't just let them jump off the cliff without saying anything. Otherwise, we give them the space to figure it out. That's really critical, and that's scary. It takes a while, and then when we get through it, the rewards are huge. We no longer have to be there at everything. We no longer have to be involved in every little detail. We no longer have to put all of this Herculean effort, which creates a bottleneck. If the leader has to be involved in everything, the team can never be faster than the leader's ability to answer everything that needs a decision. By removing that, we increase speed of decision making and action tremendously. So there's huge benefit. As a leader, once I was able to make that migration, I was able to focus on far more interesting, far more complex puzzles that needed my attention, my level of expertise, and my experience, my knowledge, because I could trust that the teams could make the decisions that typically I was making. So there's huge benefit. And from their perspective, it's wonderful because now they have autonomy. They have the ability to do things in a way that makes sense to them. We have a clear shift of accountability very clearly. It's not my plan, it's your plan. You figure it out. Oh, you need help. Great. I'm happy to help you. Whenever the team comes to us, remember that poll that I was talking about? They come to us and say, hey, we've run into an issue. We need support. We need your input. Absolutely, we're there. We help them in whatever way. Maybe it's sharing our own experience, our own information, our own knowledge, or it's figuring out getting them whatever they need. Maybe it's somebody else's expertise, maybe it's a tool, maybe it's whatever it is. Maybe it's a personal factor that they need in order to be able to navigate through. We figure that out. We're there to enable, to empower them. But otherwise, it's their plan. When all that delivery teams are doing is executing somebody else's plan, it's not only reasonable, it's correct for them to say, not my plan. Sorry, it failed. I did my part. There's no accountability. We are asking teams to be accountable. Well, then they have to make the decisions. That's the way to get there. Servant leadership gets us there. Servant leadership is the one that allows for that accountability transfer, that responsibility transfer to happen. And in my experience, teams thrive in this. They love it. They do really, really, really well. They make really good decisions. Are they always the decisions that I would make? Seldom, seldom. Today, I'm both an agile coach and a CEO. And a CEO for a medium-sized community-focused group. I can tell you that it's a rare, very rare happenstance when the teams are doing things the way that I would do it. Most often, I have to watch them do things in ways that I believe are inefficient or not the way that I would do it. And you know what? That's okay because things are getting done. And they're getting done in a way that the team owns. They fully own it. It's their baby. They're going with it. I don't have to get involved. I can focus on other more important things and just allowing things to move forward in the way that the team is able to move forward. It doesn't mean that we don't go back and we optimize. Of course we do. And we're always challenging teams. Now, if I would see an inefficiency, then I challenge the team to address that once they own it, once they have clear ownership of this responsibility and accountability. As a servant leader, I'm just there to support them and guide as needed. The guidance is we need to improve this in order to meet certain needs. This is what we need. This is why we need it. This is for whom it's important. Absolutely, I have a say. And I step back and then I look to the teams. How are you going to do it? Do you need my help? Nope. Great. Fantastic. Awesome. Let me know how it goes. You need my help? I'm happy. I'm happy to help. I'm here to help. So the shift involves moving from being accountable for doing the work, which is traditionally what Waterfall does, to being accountable for enabling the work, removing obstacles, providing context and support to the teams. And as I mentioned earlier, this requires company level recognition that the shift in delivery accountability moves to delivery teams. We need to build trust and psychological safety. Leaders model vulnerability. It's okay for leaders to say, I don't have the answers. I don't know. And this is really disorienting for leaders coming from a traditional waterfall management perspective, because we're expected to have an answer no matter what the situation is. So we figure out the answer, but we have to have an answer always, because the leader always has the answer. Again, this is the overpowering leader persona that will move boulders in order to get through. No, servant leaders say, I don't know. And when I coach leaders to do that, many of them have a genuine fear that this is going to erode their reputation, the way that the team looks at them, the respect for them, and actually has the opposite effect. It transforms leaders from this ivory tower, unreachable, higher than perspective to human beings. And once we're human beings, we can now connect at that level. And it creates psychological safety. When we as leaders say, I don't know, it opens the doors of opportunity for somebody to say, oh boy, well, we're in real trouble. But, I'm not sure, but I had this idea. And they offer it, which before they never would have. And now, from a leadership perspective, we can say, you know what? That sounds great. Why don't we try that? Or we might say, you know what? Now that I hear you say that, there's an issue. You may want to look at this. We can offer support through it. It opens doors that before were impossible. So it builds trust and encourages team contributions, where before the team would just be sitting there waiting to be told what to do. Frankly, it becomes a lot of fun. So far from undermining authority, the openness about our own vulnerability as leaders strengthens this trust in leadership and deepens the team's commitment, because now the team sees that it's very real, that they can do something to help the situation. Some teams thrive on that. Teams need psychological safety to experiment, to innovate, and adapt. And as AI introduces challenges and disruption and unknowns and so many things, boy, do we need it. We need it so desperately. We need for teams to feel, to be empowered, to be supported, to be able to do that. So servant leadership shifts the focus to people-centered indicators. We're moving away from the traditional KPIs of efficiency and output. It's not that they're not important, and we use them in other ways. But the most important thing, because that leads to getting the delivery that we need, is to focus on metrics that measure the well-being and growth of the team. Team engagement, innovation frequency, problem-solving capability, and success, sustainable progress. All of those things are going to fuel our ability to deliver more and more and more and better. We develop emotional intelligence to support, not control the teams. This fosters genuine care for the teams by investing in our emotional intelligence in ways that help the teams. This is why this is about support, not control or command. We leverage empathy, self awareness, and collaboration to help our teams thrive in a supportive environment. And a cautionary note: if we're not ready to embrace this servant leadership, and if we're stuck in, and we believe that this command and control way is the only way to do things. And again, I want to be clear: if the type of work that you're doing aligns well with a waterfall, then yes, that applies. But if you're in the complex space, you really want to think about this very, very carefully. I already hinted at this earlier today, and I want to really emphasize this point. Middle management and project management, we need to let go of this traditional management mindset because it's a dead-end career. This is where AI, if there's a pattern that it can be established to manage the thing, to task manage through the work, an AI system will be able to execute far better than we can as human beings. We don't want to go there. We don't want to get there. We don't want that to be the future. And if that's the future that we're heading into, forget it. There is no reason to have them. If that's the purpose of middle management and project managers, there's no reason to have it. I can think of very simple ways to implement that with the tools that we have today, and they're only going to get better. So be very careful. You want to be very careful with that path. That is not a path that's good for the workplace, and it's not a path that's good for you as leaders. You really want to reconsider this that Agile offered us. We haven't done a good job with it. There's been a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding. And this is a critical tool that is needed in order to succeed moving forward. Relying on task mastering is unsustainable, and AI will outperform humans. And then what? Then what do we do? So everybody benefits when we consider the alternative, when we consider ways to incorporate this servant leadership as a way to support with sincere caring, shifting from control to creating the conditions where teams thrive. As leaders, we act as context providers, enabling innovation and adaptation by providing support, not directives. We create that pull system where people are coming to us. We don't have to chase people down. They're coming to us looking for our support. We build trust, respect, mindfulness, a shared context so that we're all aligned and working towards the shared desired outcomes. And we want to avoid this digital task mastering when we carry the mindset of the command and control into the AI space. It's very, very tempting to do it. No question, I recognize that. And if we go there, my perspective is that it's not going to be fun for anybody. So let's embrace this and consider this servant leadership as a way to remain relevant and avoid being replaced by a more efficient micromanager. So if you found this helpful, stay tuned for more insights on building adaptive, resilient organizations in the era of AI. Thanks for watching.